Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining me on the fifth episode of the Zero Hour Podcast brought to you by Ground Zero Car Audio. I am Jacob Brown, your host. And later on, we'll be having a conversation. Well, not later on, like right now, with Nick Wingate about high end. And one of the things that we're diving into is what is high end and are we using that term correctly? Are we not? Let's have some fun. Stay tuned. All right, so high-end audio. What is it meant to me? What is it? And it's this thing that we throw around this term, right? And I think to me, this term has always confused me because high-end to me has always meant the most expensive thing, and usually in reference to SQ, which is also a term that I think gets thrown around and sometimes misused. So let's let's rethink that. So extremely high end reference grade is what kind of I guess the industry thinks is high end. And I've had conversations over the last, better part of 15 years um on this side of the fence talking about are we using these terms correctly? And one of the people who has helped me, I think, change maybe my perception or anything along those lines is a longtime friend of mine, Nick. So I'm going to bring him in because the thing that I want to do is hopefully it's stir the pot on this concept of what is high end and are we using this term correctly. So Nick, it's going to be nice to see you as soon as you pop up on the screen, but I really want to know what is your take on high end and are we correct? Nick, let's have this.
Adam.
What are we doing?
Well, I agree with you in that I think the term high end gets thrown around an awful lot in that somebody thinks it's the most expensive thing when I don't think it is. I think high end for me could be completely different from the high end from you or the high end from Joe Schmo. I think it's all in the eyes of the beholder. I mean, let's face it, $1,500 system may be high end for somebody, but it might not be for me. For me, that's 50 grand.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that isn't musically satisfying and doesn't make them happy. Hey, if it does, for me, that's a high end system because they're happy and they are probably done for a little while before they decide maybe they want to have a higher end system. Because I mean, when you were talking about entry level systems, entry level quote unquote, man, I think all in one package, $250.
Yeah.
You can go buy at Walmart. That's not high end for me. I don't think it'd be higher end for anybody. That's an entry level system, but when we're talking about a quote unquote higher end, yeah, it's in the eye of the beholder for me.
Well, and if we relate it to cars, right? This is something we all know. Volkswagen,
Oh yeah,
not inherently high end, but you can go from Volkswagen to Audi or Volkswagen to Porsche. But
oh,
where do you go from Audi or Porsche? What have you got? Bentley now?
right,
You've got these different milestones of what is
sure,
high end and like you said, anything I think can be high end, just trying to establish what your baseline is. And I
yeah.
think that's one of the things that irks me, right? Is when a customer comes into a shop or I'm talking to somebody and they're like, I've got this high end build. I don't, why does my brain default to I've spent a massive ton of money when that that isn't right? Is this just something that we've been taught? Is this maybe something I have translated it to? Is this an industry? Like, what are we? What is it that your take on that term?
I think an awful lot of this has to come from the home audio side of things because let's face it, we all most of us that got in this crazy industry, we grew up with home audio as well. And when we're talking about a high-end audio home audio system, you're talking, 5, 10, 15, $20,000 system. And that's because of amps, preamps, speaker cable, interconnect, turntables. I mean, we can go on. It takes a lot, plus room treatments. It gets expensive to get what we're looking for in home audio. Now, it's not to say that we don't associate the high end in car audio the same way. Yeah, to a certain extent we do, but I think the perception of our industry is the $20,000, $15,000 home system and the $15,000, $20,000 car system. They equate it, but the $20,000 home system, honest to gosh, is probably not going to sound with the dynamics and the power of the car audio system. It's not. I mean, it's just not.
Well,
Now, so
and you're using a weird metric too, because we're talking about a $20,000 home system, which is not high end in the home world anymore.
no,
So
it's not.
compare that with $1 million floor towers.
Um,
We're we're
that now,
we're,
see,
we're talking different realms of even the term high end. So I think
exactly.
that to me, I think, is supporting this conversation, right?
Yeah, I
Is
mean, $20,000 home system. That's upper mid fi
right.
for an awful lot of people. That's upper mid fi. In car, that can be considered high end if it makes the client happy, and I think
Oh,
that's part of it.
I see what you did there, because in the home world, we don't have high end home pro builds or
No,
high end home SPL builds,
no.
or maybe they do. And this is not my realm, and I know some products, right? But I know that
Hmm.
like a DefTech Super Tower is not going to behave the same as a Martin Logan Electrostat, but they're both high end and they're both
Absolutely.
great depending on what you're trying to get out of your system. So
Yeah.
it's interesting that you bring that up, is that it is to the person.
Yeah,
The
and
whole
that's it. I think it has to be about the end user. It has to be because I mean, let's face it, it's their money.
well, it's
you know,
almost
we're-
and it's almost like we have to skip the conversation about the shop side of it. It's got to be, the shop or whatever being able to explain what it is that we're trying to accomplish, the customer trying to explain any of those things. So
yeah.
it sounds to me like there's a far more in-depth conversation that is going to need to be had kind of moving forward in car audio,
Oh, I
or
agree.
maybe we need to teach it. But I want you to hang around for a minute, because
Okay.
we you hinted at some things that I was hoping you would hint at, because obviously we talk about this stuff regularly. But when we come back, I want to talk to you about the customers, the styles, the qualifications. How do we get to that customer's complete and utter happiness? So when we come back,
Okay.
maybe we can talk about that if that's cool with you.
Sure.
We'll be right back. Now, okay, so welcome back. Obviously, we're going to continue this conversation because I'm super curious, and it's something that I guess maybe even to that degree, I have talked about the difference in terms SQ, or in the term SQ, over the last several years in our trainings, in conversations online, everything along those lines. Like SQ, I think, was the first one of these terms that I had to take a step back and go, I think the term SQ is misspelled SG. And what I mean by that is people use the term sound quality in exchange for what it actually is trying to imply, which is sounds good. They want it to sound good at their listening style. So if we're talking about high end, I think honestly we can maybe mention that same point, because if we're talking about high end, isn't it still different strokes for different folks? Isn't it still, like you said, in the eye of the beholder of what is high end?
Yeah, I think it is. Um, you know, when we're talking about folks that have a a level of involvement in the music that stems, let's say, from the club or going to a nightclub or going to a concert, and it's outdoors and it's 115 dB, that's their perception of what sounds good.
Mhm.
And if that's what they want in their vehicle is that type of sound, then okay, that's what they want, then there's a side of the industry that can provide that to them. But it's still, you and I both know it, we can get them the best pro audio drivers made, and we get great amplification that goes with it, but it still comes down to what you're doing when you tune the car.
Right. And
Ah,
and not just that, but it's a whole bunch of other things that all roll into this high-end package.
yeah.
So you mentioned Pro, right? I've had
Mhm,
conversations. Rob and I have taught the concept of Pro SQ for a long time.
mhm,
We've done what I feel is a great job of trying to help educate the industry on the difference between like a reference SQ and a daily SQ or a daily driver style build.
mhm.
Um, Pro SQ, like you said, I can build you a three-way with pro audio drivers that are absolutely phenomenal, that are high end,
Yep.
and execute something that I can't do with a traditional reference style driver, which is
Correct.
make a car that's 120 dB with the windows down, pinpoint accurate on the windshield, cruising down the freeway.
Sure.
I'm not going to really accomplish that with what I think the industry equates high end drivers to. At least not
Yes.
a lot of retailers, I think. So I'm
Mhm.
hoping what this conversation does is helps open their eyes to the customer when they walk in, and maybe they're expecting a high end build, or maybe they are in a facility that is known for high end fabrication or high end SQ builds. What are I'll ask you this because I honestly don't know. What are some of what is one of the key qualifying questions that you would ask a consumer when they come into a shop, or get a hold of you to say, I want a high end build. I want to spend more money than I ever have before. That thought process. We've all had that
Sure.
customer that goes, here's what
Yeah.
I've had. I want the best.
Sure.
Is that really what we're going to qualify them for? So how do you go down that path to justify, yes, what is their definition of high end?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. Best. What is the best part of the system that they're looking to achieve? For some people, it's bass out the wazoo, 140, 150 dB in bass, and then they're going to want the front stage and the mid bass and the mid ranges and the tweeters to keep up with it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's one way of doing it. Then, if they want extreme imaging and staging with tremendous depth, okay, there's going to be a different route. That's a different choice in speakers, different type of install, different choice in amplification, DSP processing. That's a different story. If they're wanting basically, like you were talking about, 120 dB driving down the highway, and they want to be able to have it loud and clear and dynamic, well, that's a different build. And you have to be if you're a shop and you're wanting to do all of this, you are going to have to be a jack of all trades.
Mm-hmm.
Because being able to accomplish all three of those, which is primarily what we're talking about, these three types of systems, you got to be really good at this. And that's not something that every shop in this country can pull off.
Okay.
I honestly don't know of very many that could.
And that's not saying anything bad about
No,
the shops that
no.
do a high end reference build or a high end SPL build. I think you can't. Most guys aren't going to be an American performance shop and a European performance shop in the same building.
No.
So I guess that is an interesting thought process, um, to try and educate. I learn
Mm,
all of the things to be able to say, if I want to be high end, one, I need to understand what high end is and what it means to my customer. But two, be able to execute on what the customer is explaining to you that they need to fill that void, I guess, or that want and desire.
Yeah.
Is that about the most accurate way to sum that up?
Yep. Absolutely. You have to ask the questions to find out what their wants, needs, and desires are. And then as the shop, it's going to be your job to exceed those expectations.
And
That's
I think,
that's business 101 in audio. It always has been.
yeah, and I think oddly enough, I think that's a concept that's lost. And I will even take
Mhm.
ownership of that. That for a long time, I would have told you hands down I was an SQ guy. And I've said this before, and I will continue to say it. I was wrong most
Mhm.
of my career because I am more of a fan of higher end daily builds, whether it's utilizing pro gear, utilizing a daily driver style build. But, I've sat in some absolutely phenomenal, dead nuts accurate, beautifully tuned cars. And I kind of get out and go, all right, cool. It's on paper, it's perfect. On
Yep.
paper, it's doing exactly what music should do. But why am I feeling like I'm missing something? And
Mhm.
I've sat in some that are that way that I get out going, oh, holy crap, I just learned something about myself. There are little things that I can take from them. But for my entire career, I feel like I've been using that term, using my explanation of what I want wrong. And
Mhm.
if I walked into a shop and said I want a high end build and they give me a reference SQ build, I'm not going to be happy. And
No, they didn't
possibly,
ask. They haven't asked you the correct questions. They
and
didn't. Well, they didn't ask you what is the one thing in your current system that you would like to improve upon if they
and
have a system right now.
that's a good question because one of the other things too that I ask a lot of is, and this is something that I've learned in more of the tech support and troubleshooting side of the industry,
Mhm.
but like, what's your favorite playlist on your phone?
Yeah.
Let me see what you listen to on a regular basis, or can you explain to me when you say loud what you mean by loud?
Mhm.
Because your definition, Nick Wingate, of loud is different than mine, and it's
Yeah.
certainly different than Andy Smith, who builds all of the bikes that we
Yeah.
travel with,
Yeah.
that
That's
are
the truth.
absolute. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're phenomenal sounding, and they are what I would equate
Absolutely.
high end in the motorcycle audio world. But I don't want that in a car.
No.
I could listen to it at a much lower volume in a car, but I
No.
don't want anything that does that.
No.
Um,
I cherish my hearing. Thank you.
but again, you've heard some of the stuff that he's built and gone,
Oh, absolutely.
what is
It's
what is
phenomenal. It,
what is
it
going
is
on?
phenomenal.
Right.
It sounds freaking amazing.
At
And
what it's doing for the customer that it was built for with the understanding of what they were trying to accomplish.
yeah,
And it's yeah.
if that client wasn't happy, I need to have a conversation with them because
Yeah.
I don't know what they're looking for. Something no.
No, I don't either. Um, so okay. So I think we've established that the term high end is a catch-all.
Yeah, I think it is.
And it needs to, at least in the 12-volt world. Again, we've
Mm-hmm.
mentioned that in the home world it's different. There's kind of a singular style of thought process for those customers. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the guys that are willing to spend more money are chasing kind of all the same thing, maybe just slightly different executions of the same thing, but
Yeah,
it's the
depends if
same.
it just depends if they're wanting horns or if they're wanting electrostats or if they're wanting piston dynamic speakers. Yeah, but it's still the same thing. They're all looking for the closest thing to the reproduction of the musical instrument or
Mhm.
instruments or the person singing or the venue in which this was recorded in. Yeah, that's what high-end home audio is all about.
And we have to kind
And
of take that thought process and evaluate it in
yeah,
multiple different lanes. of, if you want reference, then you've got
Yes.
reference, but what style of driver do you want? If you
Uh,
want daily, what style of driver, I mean, we
Yeah.
have all of those things in multiple different avenues that aren't just
Sure.
limited to reference.
Oh, no,
Okay.
absolutely not. You know, the thing that I think we as an industry probably should take two steps back and take a long, hard look at ourselves is going, how are we actually qualifying the clients today?
Okay.
I don't, for me, there's always going to be, the standard questions we all ask,
Hmm.
and everybody knows what those are. But once you narrow it, you still have to narrow it down because um, let's face it, we've got salespeople that have a nasty habit of selling out of their back pocket. I'm sorry, they do. We all know that. And they don't get to the nitty gritty of what the client is actually wanting. They're shoehorning everybody into this system that will play loud and it's dynamic and it'll sound good. Okay, but which one of those three is the most important to the client?
Right.
Did you find out? Did you ask? Probably not.
And is the gear that you're using designed for it, or are you making it work? And
Again,
that is something that I want to talk about when we come back from the break, because I think the path that you were going down just now is almost the most important part of this. Not just qualifying, right?
mm-mm.
Qualifying is the top of the pyramid, and where do you go from there? But I
Yep.
think I want to talk about some things when we come back that are going to help either customers be able to relay their wants and needs, or shops be able to ask the right
Yep.
questions. And I am going to ask you, hopefully, the right questions, because you're screwing with me right now, and I appreciate it. We'll be right back. Okay. We've talked about qualifying. We've talked about the multiple lanes that you can go down once you've qualified. But at the end of the day, once you figure out the goal is it more important to take this high end concept and go, well, I'm going to sell you the most expensive stuff at the end of this path? Is it, I'm going to sell you the most expensive gear of this path? Is it, I'm going to sell you the most expensive gear and that your budget will allow for? Is it, I mean, there's lots of different things here that I want to kind of talk about, because when we were talking earlier, Volkswagen to Audi, Volkswagen to Porsche, Volkswagen to Bentley, budgets are a massive thing. The concept of
Yes.
high end is a massive thing. So once you figure out, I think, what the end goal is, what is the next important part to you to know that you're going down the right path?
Well, I think that first of all, we all have to understand that if we don't execute the install correctly, whatever product we're going to be choosing, whatever it is, we have to execute this install. And we better allocate 40 to 50% of their budget to the install.
Okay.
I mean, we all know that. And if you don't, something's wrong. Okay. Because, I mean, let's face it, if you've got somebody, let's just take, for example, we have somebody that we have talked to them and we have come to the conclusion that what they really want is this, the mid bass hitting them in the chest. That is something a lot of people like to have. Okay, great. Well, that means the sub and the mid bass drivers have to work together in order to achieve this. Well, that normally means that we're either going to build enclosures in the doors, or we're going to build kick panels, or you're going to have to figure out a way to add 200 pounds of mass to the door to get the mid bass drivers to perform at a certain level. Plus, then you're going to have to figure out how to get the enclosure for the subwoofer that you have worked into this deal to make this work. And then we have the amplification to worry about, and then we have the wiring and all that to worry about. So, yeah, when we're talking about what's most important, It depends on what the client wants. And I know that sounds like a broken record, and I get it, but it's just the God's honest truth, because if we don't execute the install correctly, then we're not going to exceed their expectations. And that is a key element in any part of this. Any high-end build, I don't care if it's 1,500 or 15,000 or 50,000. If we don't execute the installation correctly, whatever they're trying to accomplish, and we're trying to meet those needs and goals and exceed them, we will fail. So everybody needs to understand, part of this gig has to be the install, not just, equipment. Because I will tell you, we can get the best equipment, quote unquote, out there. Okay. And if we do a crappy install, guess what? We get a crappy sounding system.
Right.
But in the same breath, I could take, a middle of the road, sounding quote unquote product and execute the install flawlessly, and it's going to sound amazing. And I think that's something we as the industry, again, we don't think about. We think about equipment instead of the sum of the parts.
So there was a point in that rant, so to speak, where you kept saying and. It's this and this and this and this. So
yeah,
if I have to sum that up in one word, it sounds like balance. You've got to find the sweet spot between all of those things to be able to accomplish the goal that you want. Because and this is something I've always thought for a long time, but and you said it. Great install can make horrible products sound far better than they should.
Yeah.
But the inverse is true. Install can also make phenomenal products sound horrible. If
absolutely
things aren't all aligned and balanced. So we have balance, but there was, and I don't remember if you mentioned it. I was too busy counting the ands. We've established maybe what lane it is, and we've established the level of balancing the ands.
Mm-hmm.
But do we take budget into consideration? Because we've talked about it the whole time that it is, the customer's perception of high end.
Yeah.
I think you have talked about, I think you said something at some point about what is their dislike of their current system or something to that degree.
Yeah. What's lacking in their system. Yeah.
One of the things I've always asked, what experiences have you had in our segment of the industry? So, have you only just ever replaced a radio? Have you only just slapped in a cheap entry level set of good speakers to replace a blown thing? Or have you had these elaborate builds that are high end, and what did you not like or like about them? So once we get there, I feel like we always have to know budget. Is that part of the balancing act?
Sure.
Or does that steer the balancing act?
No, I think it has to become an essential part of this balancing of the system. Because if I am the salesperson working the floor and we have somebody that wants to achieve, let's say, a very high-end system that's going to give them a lot of depth, height, three-dimensionality, imaging, that type of thing. Okay, then the next question is going to have to be, how much are you willing to part with in order for us to achieve this goal? I didn't ask them how much money they're wanting to spend. I said, how much are you willing to part with?
Right.
Because this is going, whether it's 1,500 or 15,000. Okay, I need to know.
Yeah.
Because once we find out what the client wants, then we can say, okay, in order for us to achieve this goal, we got to go here. And are you prepared to go there?
Yeah.
If they're not prepared to go there, then we can get them like 60% there, 50% there. And then we can do the next 50%, let's say the next time they come in.
Well, and in typical everything fashion, there's also the law of diminishing returns.
Absolutely.
The difference between 15,000 and 30,000 is not double as good.
No.
But the difference between 1,500 and 3,000
Mm.
could be double as good, or could
Yes.
be the difference between adding that DSP and really, so I mean, we're
Yep.
incrementally increasing the jumps to try and justify maybe slightly better.
Yeah.
So okay, so yeah, budget and balance, but again, it sounds to me like it's an essential part of it. It's
Oh,
not just
it's
I have to know this to do this, but it also does sound like I have to know this to do this. So
yeah,
it's
you
that
do.
weird, again,
It's
there's a
you
balance
know,
between budget and overall, and not
yeah,
just overall and overall. So
yeah.
it
I mean,
it's
you were talking about a Volkswagen, a little while ago, right?
mhm,
So you can get, a Volkswagen Jetta, or we could get an R32 Jetta.
right. Yeah.
Which do you want? How good do you want it to be? We can get you 60 or 70% of it just by a standard Jetta. But if you're wanting something you can go to the track with, we need to get you an R32.
Right. Yeah, I know. Rob's rolling over in his grave at some point because we're talking his talk here, but
I
not
know.
doing it any
That's the reason I
justice.
said
But
it.
yeah, I mean, but there again, therein lies the fun part about it. Is you've got the Golf, you've got the GTI, you've got the R32, you've got the Golf R. All
Yeah.
they're different age ranges, different whatever. But it's always been fun to see those jumps. But then what happens? Where do you go from there? It's not
Mhm.
Volkswagen. Now you're stepping into a Porsche, or you're stepping into, a TT or a TTRS if you want that small
Yeah.
compact, roller skate
Yeah.
on steroids. So
Yeah.
great, great. And that's the thing is it sounds to me like there is something to this, and I think it's been said at some point, but the entire concept of it's all about the art of system design.
That's it.
And I've heard that term in conversations thrown all about the industry. I believe I've used it. We've all used it, but
Hmm.
is it? I think it's forgotten. The art of system design is taking all things into consideration,
Yes.
finding the happiest compromise to accomplish the goal that you are tasked with doing.
Absolutely.
It's not, to me, it's not, I saw this online and this is what I want. Well, is this what you really want, or is this what you think you want?
Yeah.
Let's have the conversation to make sure that you get what you really want for
Hmm.
your high end build that is based around the check boxes, checklists, check marks of everything that we are talking about.
Yeah. It's the gentleman that taught me, oh gosh, 30 years ago. Yeah, I know I'm old. I get it.
Okay.
One of the things that he told me is you always want to sit down with the client and you want to ask, of all of the things that we're going to be doing with your system, what is the most important aspect of the system that you want it to do? That's the check mark. That's the one thing we got to make absolutely certain we pull off. The rest of it, that's going to be up to them and how much money they're willing to part with. But that's the reason why you design the system. You sit down and design the system out, and you design it with the client there. Talk to them, ask them, hey, if you're wanting to do pillars, okay, we can do that. But are you willing to part with the ability, maybe losing 10% of your vision driving the car? Because you're wanting a 4-inch driver instead of a 3.5 to accomplish what your goals are. I get it. We understand that, but that means we got to build twice as big an enclosure.
Right.
Are you willing to go there? Plus, it's going to cost an X number of dollars more to pull this off. Oh, I didn't. Well, maybe we need to rethink this. Or, okay, you said you want a 15 AP in your car. Okay, great. We're going to take up, 20% of your trunk in your car. You prepared to lose this? No, not really. Well, then maybe we need to go to a 10 or maybe we need to go to a 12. I mean, again, that's just sitting down and qualifying what the client is willing to do. And, I think I agree. It's a lost art because there's so many salespeople that have their go-to systems for an F-150, and we all know it. They
Yep.
go, oh, I can do this. I can do this three-way up front. I can do these 210s underneath the back seat. I can use these amplifiers as DSP, and I even got the tune ready to go. And we shoehorn everything in, and it makes you happy. Really? Does it? Did you really and truly sit down and talk to the client about what was most important to them?
Right. Or, and I'll say this, flip side of that, maybe not necessarily this is what we do in every of this style of vehicle, but are the systems cookie cutter and
Yeah,
shoehorned in? Is it the same system in every car when somebody comes in and says, this is my budget and I want high end? And
yeah,
or I want the best that I can get for my money and it's this, and oh, hey, I got your system already planned out. We've done it before. It's great. You'll love it. Well,
yeah.
will they? So
That's the question. Will they?
in typical you and I fashion, I think we have this entire concept, this entire conversation has like irked me because it is, we started the conversation talking about high end.
Yeah,
Now we're not talking about any concept about high end other than get out of your head when it comes to high end and think about these other things.
uh,
Because a high end build is 100% subjective, but if
yes,
you design the system appropriately, it's going to be high end in the eyes of the recipient, of the customer, of the listener. So
absolutely.
is is the thought process behind this entire conversation, if you hear high end, turn off your brain and do what you're supposed to do, which is have a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't just sell the term high end.
Oh,
Do what you're supposed to do as a shop or as a consumer. That's the other big thing too, is a lot of
yeah.
people who watch things like this are not in the retail environment. They are in other industries, and this is what they're
Hmm.
trying to accomplish, is they
Sure.
want this thing in their car. Where I know I've been sold on high end before, and I was
Mm.
told this is what sounds great, and I believed it because I was told this is what sounds great, but I was never truly happy with it. So to the consumers out there watching, like, don't hesitate, I think, to really explain what you want. Don't
Oh,
be
that's
scared to say, is this going to give me X, Y, and Z
yeah.
to the way that I believe it?
It's their system. It's their money. They deserve to ask the questions, and they deserve answers. And as a salesperson, shop owner, you better be prepared to answer those questions, or you're going to lose a possible client.
Yep.
Which, quite frankly, today, yeah, we can't do that. We got to close everybody that walks through the door.
Yep. And we've got to make sure that they are getting exactly what they want. Because
That's it.
the next time I see them, it's because they bought a new car and they want me to do it again.
That's it.
But let's be honest, that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day.
Yes,
And
it is.
I am getting sick of being on a podcast today. So
Yep.
I will
Understood.
chat with you later. Thanks, Nick. And I will be right back. And that'll do it for the 5th episode of the 0 Hour podcast. Man, I love doing this so much I can't even remember the name. But here's the thing. I can only sit up here and come up with so many things to talk about or ideas. If there's something that you guys want to know, or you want to have a Q&A episode where we come on and discuss what you guys want to discuss, drop a comment below. Let us know, because we want to make this something that everybody's involved with. We want to know what you want to know so that we can answer those questions. That being said, join us on the next episode on February 12th, where we will discuss something to be determined at a later time. The things that I don't love. Follow us on YouTube, social medias at Ground Zero USA, all those things. And you know what? Y'all have a good one.